we're like 80% water. And so we're conductors. We're just absorbing energy. That's just what we are. We're these energetic beings. So if you have a metal bed frame, metal conducts electricity. And what do you have in your walls? You have convenient outlets to plug in lamps and, all kinds of things in your room, right? So if your bed is backed up against a wall, what it's doing, it's absorbing the energy. Now you're just buzzing, so to speak. And it just doesn't allow the body to get to that place of homeostasis because there's something running in the background.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Brian, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, Julie, it's such an honor. Super exciting to be here, especially with somebody that we shared such amazing experiences together and our growth. So thank you for having me.
I'm thrilled to have you here and also excited for listeners because I love what you're doing. And I've watched it develop, and you are creating such a needed service. So I want to just start with your story, let listeners get to know you a little bit. What led you to create Synergy 360 and, more and more and more, because I know the whole business model is kind of expanding as you go.
No, absolutely. It's constant evolution. We never stop learning, right? Like the moment that we stop learning, we're done. We're done. We're falling behind, and, really, individuals like us, we're pioneering, we're just blazing the way, and so it's constant research, to stay ahead of the curve. And it's interesting too, how we met is, we're both on this path and we're all on these paths of like healing and, whether it's recovery from sports or recovering for, autoimmune, and putting together protocols. I look at it at the end of the day as just like optimization, right? Like,
right.
Just health and just optimization, and what can we do to just really optimize our health and of course mind, body, and spirit. And through our endeavors of even working together in the past, back in 2003, I've always been in construction. I come from the lumber industry, went into construction in early 2000s, went right into building concrete homes. I always felt like I was real progressive, and I always wanted to be ahead of the curve back then, building these concrete homes. But then we had, the housing crisis hit, and just no one was into the whole green thing and sustainability and eco. It just kind of fell to the wayside a little bit. And I went into more concrete construction, but then I had different divisions where I got into doing a lot of industrial coatings, and also too was involved in a lot of mold remediation. I was a contractor, and then projects that we were on would be remediated for mold. And this was in California in a very dry climate area. And, fast forwarding from that, kind of back in the day when we first met, I was really exploring functional medicine, integrative medicine, and just the practices of really finding the root cause instead of just the Band-Aid, right? And just,
right.
Just kind of the mainstream of everything. And once I came into that, I met some amazing functional doctors, created great relationships, and I was big into athletics. And once I started doing all of this testing, on, metabolic testing and, heavy metals and, all these amazing tests that you help interpret for your clients. I was full of toxins. I was full of mycotoxins, not so much heavy metals, but just, like toxic exposures. And my doctor said, that's pretty interesting. Like, what are you exposed to? And I'm like, well, no, she says, because she knows that I'm living this like bulletproof,
Clean, right.
optimized, clean, like, and how rigid I was with my with my diet. But that stuff doesn't go away. And
Right.
and I had always thought, kind of with the Western approach, hey, your cells are always rejuvenating, and this whole process, and we're just, our bodies naturally heal, and come to find out, that was, my bubble was bursted, and I was trying to like always move to the next level in athletics. So I was like, what are these hurdles? Well, we found out what those hurdles. And so my doctor inspired me. She says, look, you're a builder. I'm like, yeah, but I haven't built in a long time. I'm doing other things. She said, why don't you consider building healthy homes? Right. I mean, this
Yeah.
goes back some years ago. And I thought, I've been thinking about getting back into the building industry, but, in all this biohacking, and now I'm going to kind of like talk about like all the things that even you and I are into, red light therapies and all the PEMF things and saunas and air purifiers and all of these things that red lights that we can, replace in the home, right? To optimize our environment, mold tests, and then it gets into that whole thing. And, so I thought, what, we're already living it. This is it. We need to build it. Like the
Right.
home needs to become the modality.
I love that.
Right. And
So
go ahead.
what your definition, or, for listeners, when you say healthy home, you did just list some things. And it's kind of like when we start to talk about toxins, it can be so overwhelming because we're exposed everywhere. So what are some of the things, if listeners are like healthy home, that you consider, because you have, especially now, because you've done helped with remediation work and all the things. Now you're building truly healthy homes. What does that even mean?
Yeah. So defining a healthy home, there's just a lot of washing going on out there.
Sure.
And I want to bring that up first because the definition green, sustainability, and all these terms they're kind of just washed in, and it's kind of misleading because somebody would think, if they're building green or sustainable or whatever, it's healthy, and that's not the case at all.
Right.
Building a healthy home, and by the way, Julie, even since we first met, like I've developed a lot of knowledge through the Building Biology Institute.
Right.
It's a great resource for all of your listeners here too, the Building Biology Institute. And they have, for like contractors in just all levels of what you're looking at, all the way from the basics of the 101 to, the master certifications. And I've required all three of their master certifications for building and environmental consulting. And through that process, I've really understood what the healthy aspects were. And it's really, like the key features on a healthy home is like water is a big one, so bringing in filtered water into the home, and recognizing like all the fixtures and, the pipes and everything that the water's pushing through. That's a big one. Air quality. It's a really broad term in air quality because it defines what air quality is. It's like, hey, do we have a lot of VOCs, volatile organic compounds, outgassing from like plastics and, all these different synthetic materials in building materials. Okay. Ventilation, are we getting good ventilated? Is the air being filtered through like HEPA,
Filters.
filtration type systems, for the entire home? Is the home free from any like moisture intrusion? Do we have good ventilation in the bathrooms and the showers? Are the fans operating properly? So it's kind of like this moisture management, understanding outgassing, understanding good centralized, if you're using like centralized heating and cooling systems, that these systems are maintained well. Getting into the EMF field, which is
I want to dig into that one a little bit, because I think parts and pieces, we've had a bunch of episodes that we talk about toxins and VOCs and air quality and water quality, and not to the level that you pay attention to in a home. But EMFs, that have to be an exacerbating factor to, it's not just that our toxic exposure is higher, which it is. But and I know there's studies, like especially with mycotoxins, the EMFs exposure makes mycotoxins more active.
Yeah.
And so I really think it's an issue that is really worth us digging into, and you are such a great resource for listeners to understand in a way where we're not scaring people, that there are things we can do as the world is, increasing exposures, and 5G and who knows what, 6G will be like. It's just crazy.
Yes.
So let's talk about kind of, if you will, I don't know. I'm thinking like, okay, here's what you do in your amazing, truly clean homes. And here's what we can do when we're already living in a home, like just changes maybe we can make, things like that.
Yeah. No, so this whole, in like you nailed it too, just kind of stick with this, like, we call it the rain barrel effect, right?
Right.
When the toxic barrel is full, it starts overflowing, and then we start these symptoms, just they become more magnified, and then one thing leads to the next, right? And EMFs definitely, and I'm going to define it. EMFs definitely push that, right? So it just takes this perfect storm of all these different things. It's just not one thing.
Right.
It's everything. And that's what Synergy 360 is all about. It's a holistic approach to the complete environment that we're inside, as far as specific to home building. But EMFs, I just want to break this down real quick. There's 4 types of EMFs. We have electrical fields, which is put out by 60 hertz cycle of what electricity comes into the homes from the power lines and distributed into the homes. That's called electrical fields. We can't get away from that, because that's how we have all the modern amenities. We have AC magnetic fields, which is generated by an electrical field. AC magnetic fields, that's the quiet, that's the silent, deadly one. Obviously you wouldn't want to live right next to a power line, because it's generating a high amount of AC magnetic fields. We have RF radio frequencies from 4G, 5G, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, duct phones, baby monitors, for all your listeners out there with the baby monitors. The Wi-Fi signals they're putting out like 5G signals within your home. So if anybody's alarmed about the whole 5G thing, you want to be just equally as alarmed as Wi-Fi. So that's RF. And then the fourth one is what we refer to, a lot of people hear the term dirty electricity, which is microelectrical surge pollution. And what that is just simply line noise. It's harmonics that feeds back and it couples in through the electrons, through the wiring into the home. So now we're having, just by the electrical system in the home, we're exposed to dirty electricity. And what generates dirty electricity are things like switch mode power supplies from a computer plug-in to charge, or to charge your computer, or to plug your computer in. Three-way dimmers, for anybody listening, of course. Dimmers are a big factor, because what it does is it's changing the frequency of the light by dimming, and it dumps this dirty electricity right back into the line. Solar panels within proper inverters, they lead to this whole thing. So the concern about solar panels for everybody, ultimately, it's the power. It's when it converts from DC to AC within the home, it creates this dirty electricity. Okay. And just for takeaways, and I'll just keep it at that. So those are the 4 types of EMFs. Okay. And, the electrical fields, we're not going to get away from that, but it's being very mindful of your exposure. So here's the cool thing about electricity. It drops exponentially. So the fields of that, so if it's a field like this, 4 feet away, it's going to be the size of my finger, so it drops exponentially, right? And think about this. If we're sleeping, now keep in mind, we're like 80% water. And so we're conductors. We're just absorbing energy. That's just what we are. We're these energetic beings. And it's not that we're not demonizing electricity, or we need it, but we could use it in our favor and still optimize our health. So by distancing ourselves. So if you have a metal bed frame, keep in mind a metal bed frame. These are some takeaways. Metal conducts electricity. And what do you have in your walls? You have convenient outlets to plug in lamps and, all kinds of things in your room, right? So if your bed is backed up against a wall, there's wiring behind the wall. What it's doing, it's absorbing the energy. And then it's just now you're just buzzing, so to speak. Okay. It just doesn't allow the body to get to that place of homeostasis because there's something running in the background. You know what I mean?
Sure. Well, we're supposed to be healing and detoxing when we sleep. So
yes.
Yeah.
And there's solutions. And that's the whole goal. That's the goal here, right? And there's solutions, just like quick, like you could work with an electrician. You could even put a kill switch in the room to kill the power to the complete room. So now you're in a complete EMF free zone, from an electrical field. But keep in mind, when you have that lamp, or hopefully our listeners here aren't still plugging in your cell phone next to your bed, but no judgment. Okay. I did it until I really kind of started putting it together. But what you're doing is that extension cord. Now you're taking that wiring from the wall and you're just bringing it up even closer to your head at your bed lamp. Okay. So, go to a battery operated, if you're into the red lights and amber lights, you can buy them on Amazon now, maybe distance your bed away from a power outlet, maybe go to some battery operated for like reading lights. These are things that we can do in our bedrooms. The thing and those are just some quick takeaways,
Love it.
Go to like a wood bed frame. If you don't have the resources right now to work with an electrician to put a kill switch in, the thing about the AC magnetics, again, what happens is with that AC magnetics in a home, if there's wiring errors, sometimes if electricians come in, even on a new home, sometimes they might cut a corner and they'll share a neutral and they'll jump another circuit off of that just because they don't want to, do a new home run, or either trying to pull power for a switch here and there. This is all the mechanical stuff, electrical work. But what, and you wouldn't know until you measure it. But like as a new builder, we're very cognizant of that. So we're running dedicated circuits, and the reason here's what happens. You have one wire delivering electricity and you have another wire coming back. So you have a hot and a common. There's 2 wires. When they're close together, they cancel themselves out. So power lines sit like this, right? That's why they're generating
separated,
this field, right? It's like a PEMF on steroids, right?
Right.
It's putting out a frequency. And so what happens is when we have these AC magnetic issues with a home, this is just one, there's several reasons. It could be that when they pulled a circuit this way, well, then there's a circuit going this way around the room, and now it's creating this this magnetic field. Or if there was a power line outside of your, in front of your house, that could be producing a high amount. If it's outside of the house, externally, sometimes they can be a real challenge to remediate. But if it's in the home, it's just a matter of having like a consultant come in with the meters, saying, hey, you have some high values in, I'll work with an electrician. We found a wiring error, we fixed it. Okay, so there's solutions to that, but that's the real important one. Solutions for RF radio frequencies are, if you are going to use a Wi-Fi router. I'm on a Wi-Fi router now, everyone, but I have it on a switch.
Right.
So when I'm doing my networking, so when it's time for bed, or if I don't want to have the frequencies. There's a lot of people that have, these electrical hypersensitivities that cannot be exposed to that, right?
Right.
So like a router is not even an option. But just for most of our listeners, if you're using that, put it on a switch and just literally just shut it off when you're not using it. Okay.
I have mine's on a timer because I don't want to have to remember to shut it off all the time, and so I can shut it off when I'm not using it, but also it's always shut off when I'm sleeping.
Yes.
So I don't have to think about it.
Yes. Yeah.
And maybe there's, a drawback to the timer. I don't know.
No, that's perfect.
I try to make stuff easy, so that, and they're cheap. Like it's not even expensive.
A timer could be $5 to $10, and like you said, save you the time laying in bed, halfway across the house where the timer might be going. Did I remember to shut it off?
Also, for my workaholic clients, it's a beautiful thing because Wi-Fi is down. If you're not already in bed, down it's time to.
Nice. I like that. We might just have to incorporate
double end there. Yeah. And
I
want to highlight. You said it, and we both have said it. I want to say it one more time. There is no perfect, and there is no avoiding. So we're talking about optimizing and reducing exposures where we can control it. And in our homes is where we can control it. And so it's not about perfect.
Yes.
It's about better.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's like there's so many rabbit holes. It can be overwhelming.
Julie, that's where you're just amazing in your coaching, right? Because it's like we're not striving. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, right? But what are actionable steps that we could create step by step at a time, and so thank you for bringing that in, because this is full disclaimer here. Like, I'm here to help bring solutions to the building industry and to bring solutions for our clients, and not to scare people. There's unfortunately in this business, there's a lot of opportunistic situations going on out there.
Yeah.
But I feel like within our realm and with our network, we're all pretty true to what we want to do in our mission. And ultimately we're here to create, or for me, it's to create healthy healing environments, and for you to help navigate that client through the journey to get there, from all factors, right?
Absolutely. But you raise a good point, because it, like you talked about, greenwashing, which comes up in so many, whether it's food or products. I mean, it's a marketing tactic. And so for people to find somebody who's trusted and not a shyster, do you recommend that they search through the Building Biology Institute? Like, how do people know? Okay. Awesome.
Absolutely. 100%. I would say the building biology is probably for all of your clients. I refer to it on my webinars all the time. They really set the gold standard. The building biology started post World War II. It was developed in Germany post World War II, like in the 60s, when they started discovering all these environmental illnesses post all the homes being destroyed and rebuilt, because now it's the turn of the century and we're building mercury and lead and copper and asbestos and all these things, right? And it's, and so that's where they started. And then it was brought to the US in like I think officially 1986. So they've been around. And so here I'm into the whole optimization and healthy home building. Right. And it wasn't until later on that I found out about the Building Biology Institute. And when I found them, like, where have they been all my life? Like, this is the answer. Know?
That was like me on functional medicine. I was like, wait a minute. I thought I knew things.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I love that. You bring up, which again is like our modern technology can also give us answers, but sometimes is part of what's creating more problems, right? Like we were talking about 5G. I was just thinking about when you were talking about World War II and rebuilding. My daughter has her master's in architectural preservation, and so she did her thesis on mold
Oh,
because mortar used to breathe back 200
yes.
300 years ago. And then we got crafty and creative, right? And we started
Mhm.
so it's like, oh, this will last longer. Yeah, and it's also holding the moisture in.
You
You
got it.
do a lot with materials in your new building. Can you share a little bit about what are some of your favorite building materials? Because I want listeners that are thinking of building a new home to maybe lean in a little bit and realize that they can contact you.
100%. And your daughter and I have to sit down and have a conversation, and because through the building biology, and so everybody, if you want to know more, you want to find a consultant, somebody to help point you in the right direction, that's really truly passionate, that has, we all have our stories of what brought us here, and you're going
Sure.
to find everybody that's so heartfelt. Like, well, not everybody, but I'm going to say everybody that I met through the Building Biology Institute, and I spent the last couple of years very involved. They have an amazing resource. So you can go under their website, the Building Biology Institute. I don't know if it's .org. I think maybe, but you'll have to post that later,
Yeah,
Julie, for everyone.
we'll find
But
it.
yeah, we'll find it. But you can go on there and you can find like providers or specialists,
Which is great.
through there.
Yeah.
And they do really good. Matter of fact, I get leads from time to time, and I'm just on there on on their the referral, or what, not the referral,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
what am I trying to say? They're
The certified specialists.
the certified specialists. Yeah. And I get calls, but like for Arizona, they're like, or California even. And they're all over the country. So
That's great.
they've got you covered. And it's just a matter of resonating with somebody that fits where you're at. And look at BBEC, which is Building Biology Environmental Consultant, which is kind of rounded, just everything. They're looking at indoor air quality and the EMFs, and just they're looking at everything to come up with a program, a protocol, just like what you do for your clients. Like, hey, what are action steps? What can I do? What are these little things? Like I was just kind of giving short demonstrations on. Now, me as a builder, kind of switching gears just a little bit.
Yeah, I want to just touch on the new homes that you're building.
Yes.
And your approach.
Yeah, thank you. And so you nailed it with the whole breathing thing and everything that your daughter did her research and thesis on. It's fascinating. And those homes have been around for like a long time.
Yeah,
we're talking,
she studied in the UK, so those were some pretty old buildings.
800 years old, 8th generation types homes, stuff like that, right?
Yep.
And they were it was the brick and mortar, it was clay, it was all these natural building materials. So fast forward where I'm at today as a builder, and I'm currently actively building thermal mass. So it's just basically these big massive walls. But now I'm evolving more into what's rammed earth building, which is a very specific specialty. But in my opinion, it's like the healthiest way to build a home on the planet.
For listeners who don't know, what is rammed earth?
Rammed earth is basically taking all of our local source. That's what's beautiful about it, because it's truly a green recycled product that we're giving back to the earth even after the cycle of the home. But it's all locally sourced dirt and aggregate. What we do is we build these forms and these molds of the walls and the window openings, and creating amazing masterpiece architecture. And we're actually pouring layers, and we're putting just a little bit of cement into it and creating this really solid matrix. And we're hitting PSI strengths that exceed concrete. And then we ram it. And so hence the term rammed earth. So that's a very specialty one. So anybody that's interested, I could just blow your mind with it. There's a company that I work with. They've built 800 structures around the world.
Wow.
World-class architecture. There's another building thermal mass, which is that's my favorite, but I've gone with a green version of this, and it's called insulated concrete form construction. And so we do use cement with a combination of like non-toxic. We didn't get into that. but non-toxic, like insulation, and we're using like natural plasters, Julie, that again, because
Nice.
we're creating a breathable environment, right? The home becomes the microbiome we talked about, right?
I love that.
Right. And we want the home to have its own natural ways to acclimate. We don't want to be using, all these sprays and disinfectants and antimicrobial stuff. Like, for everybody listening, you definitely want to, just, I would not recommend that at all. And the way that we build, we're doing it naturally, just with building materials. So the goal is to use the most natural building material. Now, I didn't bring up wood framing. There's nothing wrong with wood framing, but it's all new growth. It's not the old growth that we used to have. There's the potential issue. So if you are having a contractor build your home, sometimes there's a lot of mold on this lumber that they're framing these homes with. I post it on my Instagram all the time. And it's a serious thing, and we didn't really get into the mold, but when we're building...
and people tend to think, and we have discussed it before on the podcast, we think of like, oh, old moldy homes, but new homes are built, to pass inspection in my county, it has to pass a certain airtight test. Yeah. And like you're saying, if your building materials were wet or moldy and not dried out properly before drywall goes up, like it can be in there. So I think that it's good to touch on that it's not just an old musty moldy
not at all.
building, and that's why even when I moved to Colorado 22 years ago, I was told, there is no mold in Colorado. Yeah, there is. Yeah. Even in Arizona, it's everywhere.
80% of the Earth's biomass is fungus.
Oh, wow. There you go.
80% of the Earth's biomass is fungus. It's like, everyone, just full disclaimer, there's not one state, not one continent, nowhere that you're going to go that you're going to get away from that,
And not all fungus is bad, and not all mold creates illness. So, correct.
Not to scare everybody.
That whole thing back when you were barely eating any foods either. I wouldn't eat things that I'm like, oh, that's not the kind of mold I have an issue with. But I still use really clean coffee. I do,
Oh yeah. I mean, the aflatoxin, the octreotose, all these different types of things that are, they're in the food, so it's good to source all that. So it's the same thing. It's like we're sourcing it in the food. As a builder, I'm reading the labels, right? And that. I wish it was just, simple 5 ingredients, but when you're building a home, you're working with about 8,000 different materials. So just imagine me reading the labels. And that's what I do as building science. And as a builder, every product that I'm designing, I'm building with, there's a rhyme and there's a reason and there's an understanding behind it. And also, lastly, just talking about, so if you're building a home that is non-toxic, or if you're remodeling a home that you want to be non-toxic, if you're using and you're sourcing and you're working with somebody like me to source these types of non-toxic alternatives that don't outgas or have smells or smells that are, for people that are chemical sensitive in things like that, right? That's a big factor right there. So that's something to really take into consideration. So if it's non-toxic, it's green. So we shouldn't be talking about green, but the word toxic kind of alarms people. So it's not the most popular word when you put the word non in front of it. So we're just
an identifying qualifier. Yes,
100%.
What is? I'm just throwing you under the bus here. What is like the one thing, say somebody's building a new home and they're not going all in, they're not working with somebody like you. Is there one material that if they traded out one material, it would make a big impact or not really?
Really
I know, trick question. It wasn't to be mean. I'm just really curious. I didn't know much when I built this last home, but I knew enough to tell the electrician, I don't want any LED or compact fluorescent lights. And he was like, well, God. we don't do that. I'm like, well, you do this time. Is there like a thing that Because again, it's something, it doesn't have to be the number one, but something that reduces burden a little bit.
Oh my goodness, Julie, it's like 20 things come to my mind and I would feel guilty if I left one thing out. But I think I know I can't answer this because I'm going to have to give you 20. But I think it's when you're starting a project, working with a builder, doing a remodel, it's really working with somebody like me or a good architect that understands, the whole non-toxic, like, hey, I have multiple chemical sensitivities or I have this or that. It's working with an architect or somebody mindful of that. So that
Which
way,
I think is really like the perfect answer, because you could do what I did. You're not going to get the results. I didn't know. This was, 7, 8 years ago. To take a regular builder and a regular architect, and that's not their wheelhouse, and then tell them, but I don't want this, and I know I don't want that. And so actually, I think that is a beautiful answer, is to really work with people that are in this realm. And you already gave the really good resource of the building biology. So
well, it's like you're coaching your clients on the direction of health. It's the same thing with a builder. Like you're working with a builder and architect that understands the goal, what's most important. Like, hey, I'm concerned about mold, in my home. Hey, we inspect all the lumber. We're going to do a good ventilation and, heating and air system that's breathable. We're going to build a breathable system. We're going to use these materials that are non-toxic, and it's just really, and understanding like, on this whole EMF factor, we can build homes and we can wire homes for them to be safe. This isn't some special thing of EMF. These are just going back to the principles and going back to the basics. And so working with a contractor, it's just somebody, hey, I have electrical sensitivities to these types of things, to where, hey, okay, let's work together. And maybe we'll work with a consultant, hey, we'll go to the Building Biology Institute, and
right.
We'll work with somebody to help guide us and make the recommendations through the process.
I think that's brilliant and really good advice, especially I say it is. I love the analogy that you made. It's like going to a traditional allopathic Western medicine doc to get autoimmunity reversed. Well, that's not their wheelhouse. They'll give you the medication to treat the symptom. But so it is. It's a totally, and what came up was I was thinking, if your builder tells you that doesn't matter, or that's not important, or this isn't a problem, EMFs, mold, all the things, that's your signal that you need to find somebody who's really serving health.
And there's a lot of that too, and that's a good point. I think ultimately everybody is don't just take a builder's word for it or whatever, because if they're not listening to your goals, that's not the builder for you.
Right. Yeah. Amen.
Amen.
I love it. So I asked a very specific one thing question, and you did end up giving us actually like the most important thing. But we always end the podcast with one step that listeners can take starting today to improve their health. It could be building related. It could not be. You have a wealth of knowledge in the wellness world. So share with us an action step.
I think it's looking at everything, and it's really knowing that it's just not one thing. Nature's the gold standard. I want to bring that. I think that's really important. For healing is, the whole grounding, because that's what I'm creating. I'm creating homes that I'm building nature, right? So the quality of light, so sunlight therapy, getting into the light, natural grounding.
I knew you couldn't do one thing, Brian.
No, I know, but it's I'm kind of.
Let's go with the grounding. There's an action step people can take, even if it's not built into the home. What can people do for grounding?
It's simply bare feet. There's all the science, and I know we're talking about it today, but but the homes that I build, I'm taking that into accountability. So you can walk in your home barefooted and actually be grounding.
Right.
Okay?
But for people living in, regular dirty homes, they could just go step outside onto the earth.
They could do, you know what, and also too, like, I got to switch gears here because I'm just thinking, just be really mindful of all of the chemicals in your home. Just no different than the chemicals, we're always about putting, chemical free, whatever on our skin, whatever. Our homes, just look at your labels on all of that. If you have under your cabinet, under your kitchen sink, one of the big things, my pet peeve is the kitchen sink is designed to be able to have access to plumbing. Everybody puts all their stuff under the sink. That stuff is like outgassing and it's leaching things into the air. Get rid of that. I know it's inconvenient. Maybe put some simple core cleaners, put everything out into a ventilated area in the garage, ultimately in another ventilated area out beyond that. But I think really be mindful of just everything being stuck under there and do observations. Take a flashlight, look around, like, oh, hey, there's a leak. It's been leaking there for 2 years. Well, you know what that's going to lead to, So I think just really being mindful of these simple little things. It keeps going, but I'm sorry, Julie.
Well, and I'm going to highlight what you just, I love just start to pay attention to the products you're using. We're talking about home, and that's like a whole big thing. So it's a great place to start. And you've said it a bunch of times. You do it in your business all the time, but reading the labels. I mean, that's the homework. That's where greenwashing loses its power if you'll read the labels. So that is wonderful advice for everybody.
But back to the nature piece, I just the reason I went to grounding is like, if you're inside, you're locked up all day long, and you do have the air purifiers, and that's all great, and those are simple little actionable steps you can take, before you really start going beyond that. But get outside, as much as you can, and just breathe the air outside, ground if you can, the sunlight therapy, because I'm really big into incorporating nature within the home, but it starts outside as well.
I love that. I love just the whole idea. We think this is like so new age and fancy and complicated, but that's such a beautiful way to put it. It's just getting back to nature, bringing nature back into the home, which is amazing.
Yes.
Brian, for people that are listening on the go and aren't going to check the show notes, where's the best place to find you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm trying to always, try to keep up with Instagram and put stories. I have couple years worth of like building stories that I've put on there, what I'm doing, what I'm up to date with. It's Senergy, SENERGY, Senergy 360. So you can find me under Senergy 360 on Instagram. That's a good one. You can even message me on there. I'm good with that. Or my website, which is Senergy360.com. And you can just, send an inquiry through there. And of course, reference, Julie, so that I know where, where
we found you,
but also,
and Brian has great reels on Instagram too. I highly recommend you check out some of his reels, and because it shows, the process of you building these homes, which is so fun and inspiring.
But at least if I know that it's somebody that you're working with, I know that they're under that care, right? That they're being driven a direction of, hey, I heard you on Julie's podcast and I'm really curious about the home, so that way I know that person's on track instead of just from the beginning. So if somebody's already working with you, they've got a lot of insight already.
Well, and a lot of listeners aren't working with me, but they've been on this path and on this journey. So I say, Brian's been a friend for a long time. Reach out. He's not only a wealth of knowledge, but just an amazing human. So Brian, I thank you so much. You've given us amazing gold today.
You've been an amazing friend. Thank you, Julie.
For everyone listening, remember you can get those show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.